By July 1947, the euphoria of the Second World War's end was already wearing off. The American public was settling into a new, tense reality, looking over their shoulders as the first quiet anxieties of the Cold War began to take hold. Across the country, local police and newspapers were suddenly flooded with reports of unexplained objects moving through the clouds. The term flying saucer was rapidly entering the public vocabulary, and people everywhere started watching the night sky with genuine suspicion. Far away from the coastal cities, Mac Brazel was living a quiet, isolated life raising sheep on a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. It was a town surrounded by hundreds of miles of flat, silent desert. The extreme isolation of these desert plains meant that whatever happened on Brazel's ranch was shielded from the public eye. Any news escaping Roswell would be filtered through a national lens already hypervigilant and primed to believe the impossible. That spark arrived on a dark summer night when a massive, uncharacteristically violent thunderstorm swept across Brazel's property. When he rode out the next morning to check his fields, he found them covered in a massive trail of scattered debris. He gathered up a few pieces. The materials defied basic logic. There were strips of lightweight metallic foil that you could crumple into a tight ball, only for them to immediately unfold and snap back perfectly into their original shape. Other incredibly tough, weightless beams were stamped with strange, unrecognizable purple symbols. Unsure of what he was holding, Brazel took the debris to the local sheriff, who contacted the nearby Army airfield. Within hours, armed military personnel descended on the ranch, throwing up a rigid perimeter and completely sealing off the land from the public. Then, the military base's own public information office issued a press release that stunned the public. They explicitly announced to the media that they had recovered a flying saucer. By putting that exact phrase on official letterhead, the United States military gave the public permission to believe. They took a pile of strange foil in a desert and turned it into an international incident. The global fascination lasted exactly one day. By the very next afternoon, higher-ranking military officials scrambled to issue a harsh correction. They claimed the initial report was a mistake, and the debris was actually just a standard, harmless weather balloon that had blown off course. This diagram illustrates the immediate problem with that story. A standard 1940s weather balloon recovery requires a pickup truck and 2 men. The Roswell response involved dozens of armed soldiers locking down miles of private ranch land, a heavy-handed reaction that entirely contradicted their explanation. That contradiction sat quietly for 30 years. Then, in the late 1970s, former military personnel began breaking their silence. They told researchers that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and claimed the military had actually recovered an extraterrestrial craft, along with small, non-human bodies with unusually large eyes. The claims snowballed rapidly. Stories circulated that these alien materials and bodies were quickly packed onto transport planes and flown to highly classified testing sites, specifically the secretive Nevada installation known as Area 51, to be reverse-engineered. When an authority figure provides an explanation that clearly conflicts with their behavior, they create an information void, and a public that already distrusts its government will eagerly fill that void with the most spectacular, secretive explanation available. The government maintained its silence until 1994, when the Air Force was finally compelled to declassify the historical records and publish a massive report detailing exactly what happened on Mac Brazel's ranch. This declassified report identified the debris as a component of Project Mogul, a highly sensitive surveillance operation that had been kept hidden from the public for nearly 50 years. This photograph shows the actual hardware. Project Mogul utilized enormous trains of high-altitude balloons built from experimental lightweight plastics. They carried acoustic sensors to extreme altitudes, listening for distinct sound waves from Soviet nuclear tests thousands of miles away. In 1947, tracking Soviet nuclear capability was the single most vital, highly guarded objective of the U.S. military. Exposing the crashed debris meant exposing America's most advanced espionage network to the Russians. The government prioritized the protection of its Cold War espionage network over public transparency. They chose to maintain the secrecy of their surveillance technology, even as the myth of the extraterrestrial crash grew into a global phenomenon. You might expect the 1994 declassification to close the book on the mystery. It didn't. For millions of people, the Project Mogul explanation was dismissed immediately as just another layer of the cover-up. Decades of clumsy retractions and official silence had done their damage. The institution asking the public to believe the truth was the exact same institution that had spent 50 years explicitly lying to them. Rather than fight the conspiracy, the town of Roswell leaned into it. A crashed alien ship was far more valuable than a crashed spy balloon, and transformed the town into the global epicenter of UFO tourism. Every year, thousands of visitors flood the streets for the annual UFO festival. The local economy is entirely dependent on keeping the 1947 mystery alive and unsolved. You can see it in the physical structure of the town. The extraterrestrial aesthetic is painted onto storefronts, restaurants, and street lamps. The town itself has become a monument to the myth. What actually hit the dirt in 1947 almost doesn't matter anymore. The true legacy of Roswell is the permanent shift in the public mind. It was the moment we learned to look up at the sky, see something we didn't understand, and automatically assume the people in charge